Well, they've joined us here on the pitch, and they're going to go through their warm-up first of all, and then we'll watch them do some ball work and various bits and pieces.
I don't think they'll have to do a warm-up.
No, it's good that you've brought that up actually, Pat, because it is another sweaty day here in Shanghai. Yesterday was 35 degrees, I'm reliably informed. Today is 37 degrees, so it's got a little bit warmer. The oven's cranked up a little bit more, but we're out of the sun. We've got a little bit of shade, and the players have as well. The pitch now fully in shade here, and of course by kick-off tomorrow, which is 8 o'clock here local time, the pitch again will be in shade. It'll be a little bit cooler, although it's almost impossible to be cool here, isn't it?
I know, but you know, strangely enough, Dave, I've just been on the pitch. The pitch is not very nice. There's bumps and ruts all over the place in it. I don't know, have they been playing here or something? Or?
Well, it is a little bit. It's funny about me to talk about bald patches, but there are a few out there here and there, so it's perhaps not the best surface. But again, something that Jose touched on in the press conference there about the fact that because of the warm weather, even if you water the pitch profusely here, the air temperature just dries it up. So you don't get that slick moving, passing football necessarily that we would get back at Old Trafford on the lush surface with plenty of water that you get out of the sky in Manchester.
Well, the funny thing about when the manager was doing the press conference, obviously listening to him prior, he was talking about the quickness. He wanted the game to be played at a quick pace, because I thought maybe last year and the year before United were playing at a very, very slow pace and taking too long to penetrate the other teams, whereas if you're playing at a quicker pace, we did that against Wigan the other day, and I think that'll be the big factor in United's performances, is the pace of the game.
And another point that he made actually, as we look at Luke Shaw, we'll come back to a bit of what Josie said. We'll kind of dot around the points from the press conference as we go on here. But as we're looking at the back of Luke Shaw here, let's talk a little bit about him, because he was mentioning in the press conference there that clearly an emotional occasion for him against Wigan, having been out for so long, such a horrible injury as well. People often talk about injuries like that being basically the end of your career, but clearly he's in a good place emotionally now as well as physically.
Well, you know it's amazing in actual fact, when he got that bad injury, I was sitting just behind his mother and father. His mother and father were at the game, and broken hearted they were with the injury he got, because he got taken off very close to where we were, and it looked awful, and you were thinking to yourself, is this kid going to play again? And he's a top-class player, there's no question about that, he's a top-class player. So hopefully he comes back to what he was, because sometimes when you get as bad an injury as that, it might affect you to a certain degree, but I think the fortunate thing for him, he's only 21, he's only a kid when he done it, wasn't it? So, I mean, he's such a terrific player.
Yeah, a lot of time for him to recover to where he was when the injury happened, and I know footballers get a lot of bad press, or when they go down and perhaps roll around on the ground and look injured when they're not, but clearly the minute he hit the deck you knew there was a problem, and thankfully now we hope that everything's sorted, and we saw good bits of him at Wigan, and hopefully we'll see some more against Dortmund.
As I said earlier on, actually United buying a world-class left back, that's exactly what it's like. All of a sudden you've got another player coming into the squad of players, a top-class left back, I keep using that word top-class because it certainly is. What a bonus it is for United to have him back.
So there's Luke Shaw with Gary Walker, their fitness coach, going through the warm-up routine with the lads, and Josie just sort of wandering around having a little look at what's going on, and of course he's got eyes everywhere at the moment, just trying to get a profile of who he's got in the side, and looking to add to the side as well, which is something we'll touch on again briefly. Just to mention, while we're here, we're bringing you all the action live here on MUTV as United train ahead of the Dortmund game tomorrow, which again is live here on your channel as well. There are 1,000 fans inside the ground here today. There'll be a fair few more than that tomorrow night, by the way, but 1,000 fans here, restricted by the local authorities in terms of numbers, so they're all very happy that they've got a near exclusive seat really here today.
But when you look at them, the number of kids that are amongst them, and all with United strips on, I mean, they've got a massive support here in China, we know that, United, and it's fantastic. You know what amazes me about here as well, everybody speaks English. I mean, I can hardly speak English, but everybody here speaks English as well as Chinese.
Yes, you're part of the brigade that just shouts things louder to someone who doesn't understand you. But no, it's good to have the fans here with us today. And Jose Mourinho really saying in his press conference a little earlier that this trip is for the fans, really. It is taxing on the players in terms of temperature, conditions for training, conditions for playing. But really, you come this far because you want to give the experience of being up close with the players to these fans who rarely get that opportunity.
Of course it has, and Josie said earlier on as well that He knew United had fans everywhere in the world, but didn't realise how big the support they've actually got. His eyes have been opened in the period of time that he's been here to the number of people that are interested in Manchester United.
And he's managed clubs in this heat before. He knows what it's like. He knows what effect it has on the players. What would you be thinking if you were out there now about to run around for the next 45 minutes, hour or so?
I remember many years ago we played in America and it was 109 degrees and it was absolutely brutal. Absolutely brutal. And you think sometimes maybe people that live in hot climates would be used to it, but when they go on the pitch as well, it's brutal for them as well. They don't go out running about mad when it's 110 degrees at home, do they? Well, we don't get 110 degrees at home, do we? I mean, I'm talking about other people. But it's just terrific, naturally. I just think it's great to see so many young people that are here that support United. It's fantastic.
If you just joined us on MUTV, we are watching United train here live on your channel. If you've just joined us generally, you're a new subscriber to the channel, welcome along. You're hearing former European Cup winner Paddy Crerand talking with me pitch side here, and we've got so much to come for you in pre-season, including the second pre-season game, the first of Tour 2016, presented by Aon from this ground live tomorrow night against Dortmund, the former club of Henrik Mkhitaryan, of course, who's in the middle there with his fellow United teammates.
He was impressive at Wigan. He was. I don't think many Man United fans would know about him in actual fact. And I hadn't seen hardly anything of him until I saw him at Wigan, and by God, he stood out like a sore thumb. And you're hoping, I know it's Wigan's, God bless them, are not a Premier League side, but it's just the skill that he had and the brain he's got in his head, which is fantastic. He's going to be a big bonus to us at the start of the season as well.
Yeah, midfielder who makes goals, but more importantly, scores goals, doesn't he? We've perhaps lacked that in the last few seasons.
Do you know who he's like to a certain degree in actual fact? Paul Scholes. I mean, that's putting somebody alongside Paul Scholes is, because I thought he was the greatest, Paul Scholes, but this kid's somewhere in that region, which is going to be fantastic for the United fans when they see him playing for United, obviously. Well, we'll see him tomorrow night. Yeah,
against his former side, of course, which will be an interesting experience for him, playing against a team he knows very well indeed.
Well, it's funny that when we finish this training session here, Borussia Dortmund comes straight back out after us. Strange that, isn't it? Well, it's not strange, I suppose, but it's going to be an interesting game anyway. When you're looking at it and you're thinking of German teams particularly, they're competitors and terrific footballers, and they're going to be two-class games that United have got.
And Dortmund are a little bit like Southampton in a sense. I'm not sure that comparison has been drawn too much.
Right.
But Southampton, every year they impress, they lose their best players, they impress again the following year, picking up bargain players really who then turn into very good players themselves. Dortmund have had to do that year on year with various players leaving. This year, of course, Mkhitaryan, Mats Hummels has left as well. Various players always seem to leave. Of course, Ilkay Gundogan has gone to City, so they've bought new guys in this season who are looking to impress and get their place in the side.
Well, they lost their manager last year as well. He went to Liverpool, didn't he, Klopp? But when you look at German football, which is of a high standard, you think it's not long ago they played in the European Cup final, Borussia Dortmund against Bayern Munich. No, that's the standard of play in Germany. You can see that with the teams, the national sides they have as well. But I think the one thing that we have to do a little bit more in Europe. I mean, I always think when you look at Europe, you think of Barcelona, Real Madrid, Bayern Munich. Manchester United are along there, but we should be winning the European Cup as well a little bit more often. And I think that's what the present-day manager will be hoping for.
Well, there's certainly a strong belief here pitchside with you and also in the squad as well that this team could do well this year. Luke Shaw talking in his press conference before that the team genuinely believes will be challenging for the league title, which a lot of people will say, well, he's got to say that, he's a Manchester United player, he's got to sound like he can say the right things in a press conference like that. But there is a genuine, speaking to some of the guys, there is a genuine belief that this isn't a side looking to just be top four, they're looking to win the title.
I believe that as well. Because over the last few years you're thinking if United finish in the top four, that's good, but that's not good enough for Manchester United. Manchester United should be either top or second every year. They should be top or second. And I think with the manager that's come in now, that's the impression you get from him, that he wants to be top, doesn't want to be second.
Yeah, absolutely. He said that quite a lot.
Great attitude.
Luke Shaw clearly, after the disappointment of last season, wants to come back and do well personally and on a team level this time round. And of course, he'll be joining the United squad this season by players like Zlatan Ibrahimovic. The manager saying in his conference just a few moments ago that he's not here, Zlatan, but he's not here because of the manager sort of taking advice from other people, saying, well, he needs a little bit more of a break. And I think the phrase he used, which is an interesting turn of phrase, this, Zlatan needs a bit more rest than others because he's different, and he very much is different.
Oh, there's no question about it. I mean,
I've
not spoken to him personally, but I've watched the press conferences he's done for Manchester United, and I'll tell you something, there's no lack of confidence. There's no lack of confidence whatsoever, which I think is fantastic as well. Somebody that comes out, you get the impression he's a winner. He wants to win the league next year. There's no messing about. I'm not going to be second. I'm going to win the league. I mean, the players he's going to have round him, I've got great hopes for it as well.
We're going to be hearing from Jose Mourinho and Luke Shaw again later on tonight here on MUTV, by the way, in our Inside the Tour programme at 6:30 UK time. And that'll be filled with exclusive interviews from those two and plenty more other tidbits from the tour. And we'll keep you right up to date.
Somebody's going to ask him about the fourth player. Somebody's going to ask him.
In the press conference, he was asked about a certain Mr. Pogba.
Was he?
From
see
Juventus,
that.
of course. And the response was that he's not going to confirm or deny a transfer for Paul Pogba because Paul Pogba is a Juventus player. He's not a Manchester United player, and he doesn't think it's respectful to talk about other people's players.
Quite right, yeah.
And, you know, in some ways, some may think that's a stock managerial answer, but it's important that you do conduct your business in the right way, whether Paul Pogba will come to United, whether somebody else will. The manager's sort of saying that he's given the profiles of players that he wants to the board. So different types of players and options to perhaps bring in, and they're looking at those and obviously trying to do the business.
As you said earlier, a few seconds ago, you have to show respect to other clubs. You can't just stick, although the press do it, they stick names of players in the paper coming from different clubs, going to different clubs in England, and it's bad manners sometimes. If you're the manager or a director of a particular football club and all of a sudden it appears in the papers, we're selling a player, and somewhere along the way it might not be true. There's a strong possibility. I'm not talking about the Pogba situation, I'm talking about other situations where players get mentioned with other clubs. I mean, when you look at United, the number of players that have been mentioned with Manchester United over the close season is ridiculous. And it's the same with most clubs in actual fact. But then again, I suppose, when you're working in the press, you've got to create a story somewhere, because what can you do when there's no football? You've got to do something. So make it interesting for people, and unfortunately the majority of people believe what they read in the papers. Sometimes we do as well.
Well, yes.
Occasionally.
Sometimes people believe what you say as well, which is very dangerous indeed, by the way. Don't ever believe a word that this man says.
No, I wouldn't. Well, the great thing about people always say to me, taking the Pogba situation, you must know because you know the inside. I don't want to know the inside because I can have an opinion then. I don't want to know. I don't want somebody to come up and say to me, we're signing him tomorrow. I don't want to know that. Let me guess.
Yeah, the words loose cannon spring to mind. So
well, you can certainly get in trouble by saying something that you might not have meant or whatever. That happens all the time, particularly in football.
So we're here analysing United's training session, if you like, which is just sort of getting going, really. They've got the ball out now, they're doing a bit of ball work here and there, and they'll go through the motions a little bit with that, getting themselves ready for tomorrow night's game. The manager saying earlier that Borussia Dortmund, tomorrow's opponents, are ahead of United in terms of fitness. They've played 4 pre-season games already, Borussia Dortmund. But that also, interestingly, I know that a few of the analysts here, just over to our left-hand side, who prepare all the analysis for league games, cup games, they're not really too concerned. The manager's sort of saying, they don't really analyse pre-season opponents. It's about getting ourselves fit. It's not about saying they do set pieces like this, they've got a big man who comes forward from the back. It's about playing our game and getting fit.
The most important thing about this tour is getting everything ready for the Bournemouth match.
Welcome back to Countdown to Kickoff. Welcome back to Shanghai and to Tour 2016 presented by Aon. United have begun the first part of their training session here ahead of the first game of the tour, the second pre-season game against Borussia Dortmund tomorrow night. A game you can see live here on MUTV. And we're looking forward to that very much indeed. The players doing various different exercises today. They've done the warm-up, they've got the ball out and done a bit of work, and they'll be doing various little games and shooting exercises as we watch them here live on your channel. We're going to stay with the pictures of the training. We'll briefly leave them and come back with them very shortly. We're going to hear now some reaction from the 2 press conferences that we heard a little earlier. Stuart Gardner is with journalist Andy Mitten.
Well, I'm here in the press conference room with a friend of MUTV, Andy Mitten from United We Stand and various other publications. This is old hat for you coming to Asia, isn't it? You've been doing this for decades, we might say.
Yeah, first time I came was 95 when Manchester United played in Kuala Lumpur, and it arranged 2 games. And up until 4 days before the first game, there was uncertainty that any of the games would actually happen. And then I saw a picture in a Malaysian paper of the team arriving. I was on an island somewhere and I thought, go on there, my boys. And then United have been coming very regularly ever since. Seen United in Australia, several times in China, in Hong Kong, Korea, Japan. And each time you come, you see just how big the club are over here. I know it's a cliche, but for some of the players, they hear Manchester United are big, and then they come over here, and it just opens their eyes so much, because they know they're big in England, but when they come here and they struggle to walk down the street, or there's posters of them on billboards in a city of 24 million people, it throws them a little bit, because there's not really any club that can compare to that. Real Madrid and Barcelona come close, but United is still the biggest.
Yeah, I mean, the conditions over here aren't really conducive to a training camp and playing games because it's so hot and so humid, but the weight of the importance of the market and the number of fans here does make it inevitable that big clubs are always going to come here.
Yeah, there's obviously a commercial angle as well. If you can sell a stadium out with 80,000 people, and I was here in '99 when they sold out 80,000, you couldn't get tickets outside the ground. United had just won the treble, there's a buzz about the club, and now there's a buzz for a completely different way, because United didn't come close to winning any trebles last year, but there's a new manager in, signings have been met with agreement by a lot of supporters. There's a bit of a buzz. When you come here, you can see why. The sponsors here, the stadiums are big. It's easier to justify coming here in comparison with other countries where there are still a lot of United fans. But English football's massive here as well.
Well, when I speak to a lot of United fans, but you speak to many more, and virtually everyone I speak to says we're going to win the league next year. Everyone's excited, everybody's positive and upbeat. How big is the change, do you think, in a relatively short amount of time?
I think it's easy to be upbeat pre-season, and there's not a football fan who doesn't think of the most optimistic scenario. I can understand the reasons for optimism. I personally am pleased with the new signings. I think Ibrahimovic is a great player. He's the one I know the most about. But I saw a lot of Eric Bailly in Spain. I know the guy who gave him his debut, and he rang me last week and said he's going to be a star for Manchester United. He said, mark my words. Again, there's a hint of bias there, because he's a man who spotted him when he was 16 years old. But we've done polls among match-going fans, and there was one last week, 55% feel United are going to win the league this year. And I thought it's a little bit optimistic, because I think there'll be an improvement. I think the managers, Jose Mourinho is a great manager. I think United will improve substantially on what we've seen in the last season or two. But it's still a long way to go from 5th to winning the league, so I'll hold back proper judgment until we're 3 months in. I'm starting to sound like the previous manager.
Are we going to see Mancunian Reds out here? We're going to see thousands and thousands, obviously local fans, but some of the hardcore coming over?
Yeah, and these people shouldn't be forgotten, because the stories are written about how big the reception is over here and how the stadium will be full of 80,000 local fans. I know people who are coming from Manchester. I know people who are coming from Australia, who are coming from Thailand. Hardcore United fans, they've followed the team for years. They don't seek any attention, they just follow the team. Maybe they'll have a little flag which they'll put up behind the goal. There'll probably be 100 people. And they're not just coming for the game of football, they're coming because it's a holiday, you're coming to somewhere interesting. Shanghai is interesting. All right, it's a little bit too hot for some of the lads who are coming over, but I'm sure they'll find ways of entertaining themselves, and I've spoken to several of them. They don't seem to be having that bad a time.
Andy, thank you for that. Andy, friend of MUTV, and from United We Stand as well. That's all from us for now, from here in the press conference room at the Shanghai Stadium.
Well, great to hear from Andy Mitten there with Stuart Gardner. We're just watching Jose Mourinho playing referee, really, Paddy. You're a trained referee, aren't you? He's trying to be a mediator here a little bit between the warring teams in football tennis.
I just think it's great. Everybody's enjoying themselves, aren't they? There's a bit of fun out there, isn't there?
And that's surely the key. You've been there and done this a million times as players. This is what you want to see, isn't it? The team spirit. You know, the banter is so important in pre-season.
Fans love that as well, Dave. Fans love to see all that as well. They like to see players getting on with each other, and it's great. But particularly now when you've got a few players there that have never been here before. I don't mean in China, but not been at United. I mean, you're looking at the big centre half out there. I think he's a class act. Actually, you're going to say. I still call him Bailey, but it's Bailly, isn't it?
Eric Bailly, yes, indeed, from the Ivory Coast. And we were talking, obviously, Andy was talking there with Stuart, and Stuart's making his way over here, by the way. We'll speak to Stuart Gardner very shortly.
Do we have to?
It's in my contract, I have to say that. We'll hear from him shortly, but interesting talking about Eric Bailly. Hearing from the manager a few weeks ago when Eric signed, and in his first press conference, a few weeks ago on MUTV, Jose was saying that clearly he's young, he's got all the attributes, he needs a little bit of time, but at the same time it's Jose's job as manager to make sure he fulfills his potential. He's taking all the pressure off him, isn't he?
Well, the funny thing about you're talking about Andy Mitten, because I used to meet Andy at all the European Cup matches, and Andy's resident in Spain now, and I used to talk to him about who's player, who's this, and obviously I've spoken to him about Bailly, and he thinks he's an outstanding player because he watches Spanish football all the time, obviously doing the reporting and the freelancing that he does. He watches all the games and said he's an outstanding player, which is great news.
So there we are. We will talk a bit more about Eric Bailly over the coming days. We just saw the players celebrating a little bit, a bit of banter going on during that game. We didn't quite show you what happened or how the reaction was as a result of. Here it is, David De Gea and Memphis and the rest of them doing particularly well. The orange bibs appeared to win this one.
And I think this is the game you play one bounce and you're over the net. That's where all the fun in that is. Oh, dear me, that was fantastic, that, wasn't it?
Hopefully that's a sign of things to come from Memphis, because it was a fantastic way to win the game. And no doubt that's why Jose Mourinho was so pleased, blowing the whistle to signify the orange bibs were victorious, and in some style as well. Well done to Memphis.
But you look at Memphis and think, he didn't play last year at all, did he? He looked as if he had somebody that they dragged out the crowd and put on the pitch. I don't know whether it was nerves or what it was, but surely he's better than that. I mean, I didn't see a lot of him in Holland, but I've seen him a couple of times in the Dutch team, and he was a far better player than we portrayed at Old Trafford. He looked to me at Old Trafford that he was lost. Maybe after that first year, this could be a totally different world for him. Because all the people I spoke to were complaining, what a waste of money this, what a waste of money that. It's his first year, he's a young kid. Could all happen for him next season.
Yeah, and it's all about catching the manager's eye in pre-season. He certainly did that with that bit of skill, and we'll see that over and over again on MUTV, I'm sure. We're live here in Shanghai, just in case you've just joined us. We're watching United train ahead of the Dortmund game tomorrow, which is live here on your channel as well. Inside the tour tonight with exclusive interviews with Jose Mourinho and Luke Shaw. And we'll show you a little bit of that very shortly as well, indeed, just to get you in the mood for tonight's show. But the man who's been speaking to them, and indeed spoke to Andy Mitten just moments ago, has made his way here, a couple of hundred yards, but he's worked up a bit of a sweat. Such are the conditions here.
I was sweating before.
Stuart Garner joins us pitchside now. Stuart, interesting to hear from the manager and from Luke in his press conference before.
They're cheering for me, you know that, don't you?
Yes, indeed. The fans here, just away to our left, are cheering. All of a sudden happened now that you've joined us. But clearly both in very good spirits ahead of this pre-season tour, ahead of the new campaign as well. And Jose's sort of saying he wants to change the profile of this team. He's certainly in the mood for changing quite a lot here at this club.
Yeah, it was interesting, particularly in his press conference, everybody is reporting that United are after Paul Pogba, but he's saying he had other options as well. He had other options in that midfield area. He was very praising of the board, of Ed Woodward, basically saying that they've given him everything that he wanted apart from that last piece of the jigsaw, what they hoped to sort out, and then he would have got all his business done with a couple of weeks to go before the start of the season, which is fantastic. And as for the spirit, I did speak to Luke Shaw. I said to him that the spirit seems particularly good in the training sessions that we've seen, and he said it's absolutely outstanding, and it's so important on tours like this when new players come in that they all mix, that training's not a drag, which it could be in these difficult conditions. And he said it couldn't really be better in terms of the team spirit, which is good to see, because that can take you a long way. It can take you a long way if you've got a happy camp, and it certainly seems to be that at the moment.
I'm talking about coming a long way. I mean, we have come a long way in the last 48 hours or so. It can be difficult, can't it, when you've flown for the best part of 12 hours. We've come over, we've tried to sort of settle in, get used to the time zone, which is half the battle when you're coming over to places like this. Then players have to train. You almost have to sell it all to them again a little bit, that you make them happy, make them enjoy it so that they perform better, and clearly that's what the manager's doing here. Everyone's enjoying themselves, as we've said, plenty of smiles out there as well as some good skill on show.
Well, you remember yesterday on MUTV, we basically melted live on television at the training session, and we weren't doing anything, we weren't moving at all. They were training in intense heat and humidity, and after an 11 and a half hour flight, I'd suggest maybe the thing you don't want to do first of all is run around in intense, brutal heat, and that's what they did. And I suppose you have got to sell that, really. But Jose Mourinho also saying that he's come here China with all of his clubs. He knows exactly what he's like, and you have to tailor the sessions because of there are certain things you just can't do because of the conditions. And so far so good. It is only a short tour. After the City game, they're heading back, and I think Jose Mourinho and Luke Shaw have both been taken aback by what they've seen in terms of the fans and the interest in United. Yes, Mourinho's been here with other clubs, but it's not quite the same as it is with Manchester United. When Luke Shaw was saying every time he gets out of the lift or open whatever floor you're on, there are fans waiting. He's never seen anything like it.
Yeah. And normally whenever you get out the lift in a hotel, Paddy Crone's there because he's got off on the wrong floor.
Yeah.
But
No, I don't go in lifts unless I've got somebody with me.
Shame you're on the 17th floor then, isn't it?
I know. Was that you?
Well, there we are. United continue to train here in Shanghai. In the heat of Shanghai, it'll be good to have the game a little bit later here tomorrow than we are currently now. Currently at the moment it's 5:30 local time here. The game tomorrow kicking off at 8 o'clock, which will cool it down a little, but not that much.
I said earlier on when we were talking, I've been on the pitch. The pitch is poor. It's a poor pitch.
Really?
Well, go and have a walk on it in a few minutes' time or when the programme's finished. The pitch is poor.
In what way? Just dry,
it's just bumpy and bits of grass not there and all that sort of thing. I'm just wondering, did they use the softener? Has somebody been playing on it or what's been going on?
Shanghai East Asia play here, or Shanghai International Port Group as it's known now. Sven-Göran Eriksson, the manager. They play here, so in the Chinese Premier League.
Oh, so they've played quite a few games, haven't they?
Yeah.
And of course this is the club where Hulk has recently signed for more than £45 million.
Would
So
you
he'll want
come
a
here
good
at
pitch.
the end of your career, Pat, for a bit of...
For the money they were getting, I probably would have liked to, but I mean...
Because you didn't really run around anyway, did you? So it would...
No, when you've got a brain you don't have to run about. No, but you know, the countries that in my time you never thought anything of them really as football, going to be football giants. China was one, America was another. You never thought, well, we'll never take off football here, particularly in America. But here now as well in China, it's a football mad country, and you're thinking about 1,100 million people. 1.1 billion people in this country. And it's a football mad country, soccer, it's crazy. They're going to be a big power in years to come. I might not be around to see it, but they'll be a big power in years to come. So will America.
Well, money's no object, clearly.
No, money doesn't mean anything. And that's when you're getting players at near the end of their career. It's a great thing to get a few quid in the bank as it come here and play for a couple of years. Something like that. But it's just the fanaticism for football.
We talk about team spirit. It's important everyone's happy, of course, but even in pre-season there are little tantrums about who has won and lost matches. It's competitive right to the end, even in these kind of training kickabouts. And there's a bit of a debate here. Was it an orange win? Was it a green win?
Well, let them sort it out.
They're not happy there at all with Gary Walker. They're look at this. And it's actually quite interesting that obviously the lads all having a bit of fun and games in there. Interesting to note this season, going into the new Premier League campaign in a few weeks' time, that there are new rules in place now for players to be careful with match officials. Clearly the Premier League, and we know that situation there was a bit of fun.
Yeah.
In a game, if a team or a number of players were to surround a referee like that, there could be a plethora of red cards or sanctions for the club. They're really trying to clamp down on that this season, which from a commentary point of view, and we're both in the commentary box, can cause all kinds of problems if cards are flashed left, right and centre. You don't know who's got them, you don't know who's going off. But it's interesting to see that every season something changes to try and clamp down on a problem that the rule makers have seen, and clearly they want to protect match officials a little bit more.
Well, I think it's one of those things, you'll see loads of yellow cards in August and September, then everyone will just forget about it by October and November. But I do think if you could get standards of behaviour better, a bit more like rugby union standards, if you like, in terms of the referee and not surrounding the referee, and so I think everyone would get. But it's not just referees, I think it's managers as well in the technical areas. Indeed, and they don't want everyone surrounding linesmen, referees. But I bet you there'll be yellow cards, possibly reds, galore in August and September.
I can assure you that was all good-natured, and no fitness coaches were harmed in the filming of that banter.
I know, but
here on MUTV.
you know the thing about this, regardless of all the banter and all the fun, they'll be trying to impress the manager.
Definitely.
That's the important thing. They'll be trying to impress the manager because you've got a lot of top-class players out there. You can only play 11.
And I suppose the problem is when you've had a couple of seasons where players have been disappointed with the way it's turned out, managers as well, fans likewise, pundits have been pointing the finger here and there, and obviously great to get a trophy at the end of last season, but not finishing in the table where you want to be. There are very few players who know that their spots are nailed down. In fact, some would say there's no one who knows their spots are nailed down, or in some ways you perhaps who you'd pick in certain positions. But
I think since what we've seen so far, in actual fact, we're seeing people passing a ball that means something rather than just pass it for the sake of passing it. I mean, the number of times we saw in the last couple of years United having 20 odd passes and not even being at the halfway line. I think what delighted me most about the Wigan game was the pace of the game, the way we played, how quick we played it. And when you're playing quick football, and particularly when you've got good players, teams are going to struggle against you.
Yeah, you're right in terms of players impressing the manager, and the manager also trying to use these friendlies to maybe try different things, different personnel, maybe slightly different formations. He did say in the interview that I've done with him that you'll see later on, tomorrow, he started on Saturday at Wigan with Eric Bailly and Daley Blint as the centre-back partnership. Tomorrow he said he's going to start with Phil Jones and Eric Bailly at centre-back. And then you've got obviously Chris Smalling still to come. He's not going to play in this game yet, even though he's over here. So he's using pre-season clearly just to test a few things out, seeing what partnerships are like, seeing what works, what doesn't work. And when you're against better quality opposition, with respect to Wigan, Borussia Dortmund, Manchester City, then the tests are bigger, aren't they?
There we are, a little slice of the interview with Jose Mourinho, who spoke to Stuart a little earlier. That will be on tonight in full, 6:30 inside the tour, 6:30 UK time, that is. If you're new to MUTV, we speak to the manager and the players exclusively, of course, many times during the week, pre-match, post-match, and bring you lots of interesting and intriguing first-team content, as well as live under-18s and live under-21s football. And of course there are players in this squad who have risen up through the ranks from various parts of this club. I think it's 9 academy graduates in this travelling tour party, and they're not just here to make up the numbers, by the way. A lot of them had a really big impact on the season last year, either for United or for other clubs out on loan.
Well, to be fair to Louis van Gaal, actually, maybe because of injuries and whatever, he did play kids, there's no question about that, and some of them blossomed, really blossomed. Probably kids that maybe if there hadn't been an injury list you might never have heard them. Marcus Rashford an example. Great chance for them, great opportunity for them, and great chance out here as well to impress this manager. It's
interesting as well when you talk about Marcus Rashford. Years ago, perhaps when MUTV wasn't around, people would have said, well, who is this guy? But now, thanks to the live coverage, a lot of people know who these kids are from sort of sometimes 16 when they step into the under-18 side and start playing live football on a Saturday morning.
Yeah, I mean, Paddy and I were both at the UEFA Youth League game in Eindhoven. Switzerland? No, Eindhoven.
It definitely wasn't Switzerland.
In Eindhoven.
Oh, it was close.
In September, and Rashford played and scored a couple of goals and was superb. And you thought, yeah, he's definitely got something. We didn't think he's going to be playing for England by the end of the season, but you did think, he's definitely got something. But it just shows you to keep an eye on those teams, which you'll see live on MUTV. But it was interesting seeing Rashford and Will Keane out there as well, because Will Keane got that injury at Shrewsbury. Now, if he hadn't got that injury at Shrewsbury, would Rashford have been involved against Midtjylland a few days later? It's amazing how the fate, and then 2 months later he's in the Euros. What football's a remarkable thing, isn't it?
It's an example of how one door closes and one opens, isn't it, very much? And who knows how Will would have done if he'd had that chance, and all the rest of it. It's something where you need luck, don't you?
If he hadn't have been injured, where would he be now? He could have possibly been a regular in the first team. I think he's got great ability, the kid, and this is a great chance for him to impress the manager. I wouldn't write him off in any way whatsoever. I think he's got great ability.
And it's a great opportunity, of course, because there are only 3 sort of mainstream centre-forwards for United here. Rooney and Rashford were with England in the Euros. They're unlikely to play too much on this tour. Will Keane, of course, the 3rd striker here, and we will probably see an awful lot of him, and he'll get his opportunity to impress, as indeed he did against Wigan, and he scored. Spirits are high in Shanghai as United prepare for the first game of Tour 2016 presented by Aon, which is live here tomorrow against Dortmund, and Ethan, the manager, enjoying himself in the heat here in Asia. We've been talking about the United players going through their paces here. We haven't touched too much on the goalkeeping situation at the moment. So let's talk about that now, Paddy, because we've got an undisputed number one at the moment, or indisputed number one, I should say, in David De Gea. Sergio Romero was impressed when he's come in, and Sam Johnston, people talk about him being one for the future. Well, now that he's 23, he'll want to be one for the present, won't he, as well?
Exactly. I mean, you look, everybody that's out there that's not in the first team will be fighting to get in the first team. And that's great when you've got a big squad of players and they're all challenging you. It keeps players on their toes. Have to be on their toes. I mean, our goalkeeper's been fantastic the last, since he came, more or less, but to be Player of the Year, what, twice? Is it twice or 3 times?
3 times now,
3 times in a row. I mean, you never want the Manchester United goalkeeper to be your Player of the Season. You want somebody like Wayne Rooney or somebody that's put the ball in the back of the net 30 or 40 times to be the Player of the Year for Manchester United.
Great stop there from David as well. But there are some other goalkeeping contenders, it would seem, out on the pitch at the moment. We'll just cut away from the keepers for a second, because the players are playing some kind of rugby, Gaelic football
yeah, more
mixture here. And again, the competitive nature of this side is coming out in whatever the sport.
You can either play it with your foot or your head or whatever. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? You've got to keep moving all the time. You've got to try and find a little bit of space, and they're playing in a little bit an enclosed area where sometimes it's very difficult to get space. It's so important in a football field to create space.
I got to say, if I were a player out there, I'd be one of those who wouldn't have a clue what was going on. I just hope that I got it right when I got the ball. I don't know about
well, you'd just be acting normally then, wouldn't you?
Somebody explain the rules. I'm not 100% sure on this.
That's for the next Jose
You can
interview.
use hands, you can use feet, you can head it, you can throw it.
But clearly they're all enjoying going through this training session, and as we were talking about the guys who are allowed to use their hands on the pitch,
yes.
We'll just sort of go back to the goalkeeper as well. We kind of watch a little bit of this mayhem in the middle of the pitch. I mean, it's important as a defender that you know that the guy behind you knows what he's doing, and clearly the guy we have with the gloves regularly as a number one is one of the world's best. He'll be disappointed about the summer, though, wouldn't he? With Spain's campaign, it didn't quite work out the way that the Spanish wanted.
But when he makes a mistake, it stands out like a sore thumb, because you never expect him to make a mistake, do you? I mean, when you look at over the last 3 seasons, our defence has been grateful that he's been in goal, because our defence has not been as great as we would like it to be. I still keep thinking when somebody comes in my penalty box, you're going to get hurt, son. So let's hope we can do that this season.
Of course, all these players getting used to new coaching staff under the new manager, Jose Mourinho, as well. We've been talking to them as we've gone around the hotel and around the training sessions and things as well. And clearly they're delighted to be here, be involved. And there are always new methods with new staff, aren't there, which we've seen a lot in the last few years with David Moyes, Louis van Gaal coming in, and now Jose Mourinho as well.
Yeah, with 2 goalkeeping coaches, Silvino Lauro and Emilio Alvarez, which is interesting. And you mentioned Sam Johnston there as well, who's in nets here. 23 is young for a goalkeeper, but also he's had a taste of first-team football at Preston and a plethora of other loan clubs. And you do wonder, what does the future hold for him? Because thankfully, we're not talking this summer about the future of David De Gea, which we were doing a year ago. It doesn't look like, fingers crossed, that's at all on the agenda. So what happens to Sam? Does Sam look for first-team football elsewhere? Does he go on loan again? What does he do? Because remember, he played 4 times on tour last year. He was, in many ways, a main man on tour last year.
He made his debut in this stadium as well, didn't he, against Shanghai Shenhua?
Well, when you're talking, Stuart, but probably the 2 best goalkeepers in the world, I think, are him and the guy at Bayern Munich. So he's not old, our goalkeeper. He's still very young. And it must be difficult for the other goalkeepers to think, well, how do I get in the team? Because you want to be in the team. You want to be in the team. How do I get in the team? How do I get past this fella here?
Yeah, I mean, Sergio Romero is, I think, the sort of record number of caps for Argentina for a goalkeeper. But he's sort of, I suppose he came here knowing that he'd be the number 2. I suppose you could be happy with that position. But it is important that David De Gea is pushed, isn't it? That he's definitely the number 1, but you need...
You're right, you have to be pushed without question. You can get very slack if you're not pushed. That's the same with outfield players as goalkeepers. You have to be pushed. There's got to be somebody challenging for your position. I think we've got that in abundance.
That's where I guess for someone like David, having been behind Iker Casillas in the Spanish pecking order, he's always had something to aim at internationally, as well as obviously wanting to keep up his standards for his club. But he knows if his standards drop for Manchester United, then he won't be number 1 for Spain. And at the moment, he seems to be seeing off
Yeah, well, the
Casillas,
great thing
obviously
about him,
vast experience.
he's actually took up the challenge and won it. He's won the challenge. But the biggest thing is staying there. That's the biggest thing, is to stay there, not till the end of the day take your place. So it's always a challenge for every player. Every game's a challenge for every player, because every player wants to do well, and unfortunately along the way you can play 10 games and then your 11th game you can have a stinker. There's always a possibility of that. Goalkeepers they're not allowed to have stinkers, because you're in serious trouble if your goalkeeper is a stinker.
So hopefully he won't have any of those during the course of this season. He is Manchester United's number one, certainly in terms of in the last few seasons, and I'm sure he will be under Jose Mourinho as well. In terms of numbers, of course, we must make the point, and we'll make this point throughout the course of the tour. You'll get rather tired of us saying this perhaps, but we need to reinforce it to you that the numbers you might be seeing on training tops, the numbers you'll see on the back of the players' shirts tomorrow night, are not necessarily the numbers they'll be wearing in the Premier League season and in various other competitions as well. The season squad numbers will be confirmed just before the start of the Barclays Premier League season, so don't go rushing out and adorning your news strips with names and numbers just in case they are incorrect. You can put Crerand and whatever number you like on the back of your shirt. That's
a big note.
But that's just an aside to tomorrow, and we look forward to seeing who he picks for tomorrow night against Borussia Dortmund, which will be a real test, won't it?
Yeah, I mean, the point he made in the press conference again as well, there's that Borussia Dortmund are maybe a fortnight further ahead of United in terms of when they return for pre-season training. I think they've had 5 pre-season
four games,
four
games, 3 wins
already.
and a defeat last time out.
So you'd imagine they've got the edge on fitness and overall sort of shape, really. So I think it'll be a much bigger test far bigger test than Wigan, and it'll be really interesting to see. But I think we're here now, and it's much cooler, isn't it? Because obviously we're in the shade. Fast forward tomorrow night, another 2 hours on. You'd imagine conditions actually won't be anywhere near as bad, as severe as they have been in training or whatever. So actually we might see a decent game. I thought the pace would be very slow because of the heat and the humidity. I wondered if it might be a little better than that. What do you think?
Yeah, and a 25-man squad here, 24-man squad for Dortmund. There will be changes, obviously, which I know will send Paddy into a spiral spin at half-time tomorrow night, but we'll do our best
I know all the United players, that's not a problem.
We'll do our best to either calm you down or rev you up, depending on what mood I'm in the commentary box with you tomorrow.
Stuart made a point there of having played 4 games. That's a bonus for a start, having played 4 games pre-season, and then you're playing against a team that's only played 1 game. So it is a bonus if you've played a few games. And I think pre-season you can get as many games in as possible, because you've got to get up to a pace of the game in the Premier League that's ferocious. A ferocious pace, the Premier League. And you've got the violent part of the Premier League that you don't have in other football countries. Like, we can challenge in England and put our foot in, but you can't get away with that in other countries.
Your face lit up though when you said violent.
Physical violence.
Yeah, it certainly will be a factor in this season to come, in all domestic and European competitions as well, coming up for United. And the squad, as you can see, just sort of limbering up now after that crazy game we saw just moments ago in the middle of the park, and just sort of bringing things to a little bit of a close here in Shanghai. Just getting the stretching going, getting the rustiness out of the legs ahead of tomorrow night's game, and shortly they'll come around and meet the fans as well and say a quick hello to the 1,000 or so fans who've come inside the stadium here. Numbers restricted by the authorities rather than by United here today.
I'm having a quiet smile here at the moment in time, because we're backs are towards the players, and it brings back memories of Paul Scholes aiming balls at us trying to hit.
We'd be in desperate. If Scholes was here, we'd be in desperate trouble.
You'd be hiding somewhere, wouldn't you? Because he was so accurate at it.
All it would take was a second or so to look away, and you'd end up paying for it. And I think that happened a few times on tours. It happened a few times in Asia. I remember my first tour when Paul Scholes used us as target practice. But as it is, the guys just sort of having a bit of a chill out now, really, before they go in and look ahead to tomorrow night's game. And a couple of games here in Asia for the locals to really enjoy and savour. Dortmund, of course, tomorrow night, live here on MUTV. Manchester City coming up in a few days' time from Beijing, again live on your channel, which will be, you would imagine, a pretty tasty affair, Stu.
Yeah, you would have thought so. City played in Munich last night and lost 1-0, but had a pretty young side, and a lot of their sort of England players and Spanish players are in the squad, but I'm not so sure they're going to play in that game. I don't know. So it might be quite a youthful Manchester City team, but rightly or wrongly, whenever City play United from now on for the next few years, it's going to be it's Pep against Jose.
Yeah.
It's bound to be, isn't it? However much they play, I'm sure they will play it right down.
But you know, it was a little bonus for our channel as well, in actual fact.
Yeah.
Down through the years, this game would have been shown on some other channel, wouldn't it? Oh, my duck in there,
Yeah, you were about 2 metres away from getting one in the face there.
But it's great that we've got the 2 games anyway.
Certainly is, and of course Galatasaray live as well from Gothenburg at the end of the month. And we'll be looking forward to Wayne Rooney's testimonial and the Community Shield as well before it all gets really serious with the start of the Barclays Premier League season against Bournemouth.
I wonder how many of the players who start tomorrow night's game will be starting at Bournemouth, in a month's time. You're already thinking about that game. That's what it's all about.
Do you know something, Stuart? I think the manager will have a good idea what his team's going to be against Bournemouth. Yeah. I think he'll have a good idea.
Players just walking along behind us
here.
They're
clapping us there, were they?
Yeah, applauding the fans who have waited a long time to see their heroes, and are delighted to see them here as well.
And the guys have gone through their paces, a bit of a wave to the fans over here. I'm sure they'll come and meet some of them very shortly as well. They are looking forward to the challenges to come in the coming weeks and the coming days, of course. As we mentioned, plenty to look forward to here on MUTV. Should be a fantastic season at all levels for United. It's been great to watch.